So humans are born to walk. We're bipedal. It's bizarre that there are not many bipedal animals. Like, name me 5 other bipedal animals that don't have feathers or a long tail that they're standing on. And so that requires that we're always constantly moving, and our digestive systems require that. They want us to be moving along. Our lymphatic system for sure works on the basis of constant body movement. Our balance and our overall just proprioception demands that we move a lot. Again, we move through time and space and planes and ranges of motion. And walking is the quintessential human movement.
Hi, I'm Erin Power. I'm a health coach, a health coaching educator and mentor, and your host of Health Coach Radio. This podcast delves into the art, science, and business of health coaching. Whether you're aspiring to land a coaching dream job or to embark on your own entrepreneurial adventure, we cover it all. Our mission is to help you grow your career, elevate your income, change the lives of the clients who need your help, and leave a lasting mark in this rapidly growing field. It's time for health coaches to make an impact. It's time for Health Coach Radio. Well, I'm going to jump right in, not with a question, but with a statement. And I want to preface this by saying when I delivered this statement to you, that you know that I respect and admire you tremendously. So that's what
here we go. Okay.
You are a freak.
Okay.
You're an absolute freak. Okay. I want to talk about your hip.
Yeah.
Because I was astonished to see 1 week after hip replacement surgery, you are on Instagram walking around without even a hitch in your step. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it is crazy. And thank you for calling me a freak. I'll take that. I'll accept that. I'm 3 weeks now, 3 weeks and 2 days as of today. And I could get up and dance for you. And, the new hip has made me a better dancer. But several things to keep in mind. Number one, I needed a hip replacement. I'm 71, and I needed a hip replacement because of the wear and tear I put on it through decades of running, all of which has sort of been an evolution toward this kinder, gentler life we call the primal blueprint and primal endurance, and all of the things that we've talked about slowing down and being mindful about how you work out. So I had wear and tear on my hip that was finally causing issues, so I had to have it replaced. Knowing that I was having it replaced, I went to the hospital with the intention of a quick recovery. And in order to do that, you have to go into the operation, into the procedure fit, which includes not just aerobically fit, but, muscularly fit. So even though I had not been able to walk for the last 6 months without a hitch in my stride, without a severe compromise in my gait, without limping, I could do elliptical. I could get on the elliptical machine and spend a half an hour doing the elliptical. So I did that. I could do some leg weights. I could do in or out of thigh. I could do leg extensions, hamstring curls. So I did those. And when I got to the time of the procedure, I was looking at the other side, like how quickly can I rehab and get back to my, normal life. The doctors remarked after the operation was over, they said, we could tell that you'll be a great candidate because you were so fit. You were so muscularly fit going in. Now, that's not necessarily the compliment that you think it is. What it is an acknowledgement that most people who have a hip replacement do so after years of inactivity, right? The pain causes them to stop moving, causes them to allow their muscles and their joints to atrophy, and causes a sort of cascade, a downward cascade, a worsening and worsening of the pain, the immobility, and all of the things that can be fixed with a new hip. The problem is once you get your new hip, once you've had the procedure, now you're starting from zero in your rehab. And so that's why it takes months and months and months for people to come back. So in my case, and they have you get up that afternoon and walk and stand and bear weight on it. They give you crutches, of course, and the physical therapist comes into the room and gives you the whole spiel about, okay, where they use these crutches for the first 2 weeks. I threw them away the first day. And the reason for the crutches is it's so you don't fall. If you fall on a new hip, you're screwed. So you don't want to fall. But, I immediately started my rehab the next day, and I'm not being, overly aggressive. I'm doing what I can do. Yeah. And how they do this is they cut into the front side of your hip. It's about a 6-inch long scar. They separate the muscles. They don't cut the muscles, but they pull them apart, and they, pull the femur out, and they saw it off, and they put the thing in, and they drill out the middle of your hip socket and put a ceramic cup in there and stick them back together again and sew you back up.
Wow.
The real trauma is to the muscles that have been so stretched by the procedure. So I still have some swelling there, and my hip flexor is going to take the longest to come around. But I'm 3 weeks and 3 days, and yesterday I went to the gym and I did 10 minutes of backwards walking uphill on the treadmill, which is I do that as part of my routine anyway. Turned around and walked half an hour uphill on the treadmill at a fairly brisk pace. Got on the Peloton and rode that for 30 minutes. Did some stretching, and that's kind of been my routine. So I literally feel like I'm 90%, maybe 95% back already.
Wow.
But it's a long tail. So I think the last 5 or 10% is going to take, a while to come around. But I'm so far ahead of where I thought I'd be in doing this.
I mean, I'm just curious because they sawed off part of your bone and then attached something new to your bone. So that bone, trauma injury is still present.
That's the least of it. That's the least of it. It's bizarre. It's like they cut the bone off and put a metal piece in there, and it bonds, and it's weight bearing, and it's really, I don't know whether the nerve and the innervation in that part of the body is, but my pain was never more than a 3 on a scale of 0 to 10. I never lost sleep as a result of pain. I mean, it's rolling over, and again, with the muscle and the stitch, they actually they don't stitch you up anymore. There's stitches inside, but then they glue. There's like 6 inches of glue where they glue the skin together on the outside.
Okay. Oh.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I guess you'd have less of a scar that way if there's no stitches. Oh.
Yeah, not that I care. It's sort of, at this point in my age, a scar like that's a battle wound. It's a badge of courage,
Yeah. Interesting. So because I think in my mind, I was thinking, well, obviously Mark sailed through this because Mark's been devoted to really, I'm going to use the word optimization, even though I don't like that word because it just feels vague, but like optimizing your health and, being strong and fit and the anti-inflammatory, elements of your diet. But what I'm hearing you say is that once you got the go ahead that you were doing this hip replacement, you doubled down. You said, I'm going to do things as well in the short term. But how much do you attribute, like if you had to weight it between like what you did in the short term right before surgery versus your sort of lifestyle writ large?
I'm going to write probably a treatise on this for my doctors, because there are so many things that I think I did that could be incorporated into sort of a standard lower limb recovery protocol, right? Much of it is the prehab. Much of it is leading up to it. Absolutely a low inflammatory diet, a diet that focuses on quality protein and quality fats and minimizes carbs and seed oils and all of the things that we talk about every day in the Primal Health Coach Institute. Those are all very impactful, by the way. Those have an impact. One of the things that they tell you about a hip surgery is the one thing you want to avoid is an infection. So I triple down on vitamin D, right? I mean, that's my immune support go-to. So vitamin D, a little bit extra vitamin C, but mostly vitamin D. I upped my collagen. I want to repair that tissue. So I upped my collagen intake. And then I cannot overstate the importance of the shoes that I am rehabbing in. And, I have this new company, Peluva. We make these 5-toed shoes. The importance of the entire kinetic chain, right? And the kinetic chain, the posterior kinetic chain, which starts with the bottoms of the feet, works its way all the way up through the legs, through the glutes, lower back, and all the way up to the neck. It requires that you have ground feel, that you feel the ground underneath you, so that the brain can orchestrate a stride, a gait perfectly in how your foot informs the brain of the tilt and the texture of the ground underneath, so that it knows exactly how much to scrunch the arch, how much to bend the toes a little bit, how maybe to roll the ankle out a little bit, how deeply to bend the knee to absorb the shock, how much to roll or tilt or whatever is necessary with the pelvis, with the hip. And my ability to splay my toes day one, walking through Vale Town Square without crutches. I mean, it wasn't pretty, but I was focusing on heel, land on the heel, roll off the big toe, land on the heel, roll off the big toe. And you can't do that in sneakers or boots or, any of the traditional standard crappy footwear that we all wear. So I'm part of this treatise that I'm writing for my doctors and the team, because they are very impressed with my recovery, regardless of my age.
Yeah.
Part of it is that ability to reacquire a balanced gait. Because you know that once you have an injury like that, the brain's tendency, if you don't have the input, the brain is tending to favor it and to cause another form of a limp or another form of some adaptation that is not biomechanically symmetric, right?
Yeah.
So my idea was always, I'll even compromise the length of my stride in order to maintain the balance and the symmetry.
Cool. It's so interesting, actually, maybe it's just the echo chamber that I'm in and like we're in, but the narrative has really changed on like injury recovery, lower limb specifically. So now I think it's funny because it used to be rice and now it's meat. Have you heard this? So rice.
Well, I know rice was discredited by its
By the
inventor.
guy who created it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what I think is great is that the new acronym is MEAT: movement,
elevation. Exercise. Yeah.
analgesics for pain if you need it.
Yeah.
Treatments, right?
And
I love it. I love that it went from rice to meat. That's just great. But,
right.
But actually, so I was on a trail run, and when you're trail running, you have to be really, really conscious of where your footfall is because you can roll an ankle, which I did. I wasn't wearing my Peluvas on the trail run because I'm not at that level yet. But so it was a pretty good little sprain. But I already know I need to move it. So I didn't stop walking. I didn't, rest it. I didn't ice. I didn't do any of the ricing. We didn't do any of that. But it was like my feet were craving toe splay. So I just walked around in my Peluvas. It's like my body knew that my feet had to get right before my ankle could recover.
I love it. So, that's 100%. It's a great, and you obviously have the awareness going in. You were looking for that.
Yeah.
You were maybe not looking for it, but you're certainly open to that as an answer, as a possibility that your feet need display as part of their full functionality.
Yeah.
And if you can't allow the toes to splay outwardly, if you have to compress that big toe against the other toes at the metatarsal head, it compromises everything. And then again, the body, which wants to do the right thing, the brain has to guess, okay, how much do I roll that ankle? How much do I bend that knee? How much do I, bypass all of the haptic input because of these thick, cushioned, cloudy shoes that I'm wearing that just drives all of the forces further up the kinetic chain until the first link breaks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my recovery was astonishingly fast, like Mark's, like Sisson-esque almost. But I think back to other, years gone by when I've sprained my ankle. And what do? I just bandage it up as tightly as possible in like an ace bandage and rest it and don't move. And then you're kind of like
lots of ice all the time. And,
even
though intuitively, because it's so freaking uncomfortable, you like this ice. It can't be good for me, but the doctor says to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because like that ankle roll happened at the top of the mountain, like at the very top. So I'm like, well, I got to get back down to the car. By the time I got back down to the car, I already felt better. And then I got home, put my Peluvas on, and within 2 or 3 days, I was out trail running again. Right. No, I'm not pounding the pavement. Don't worry.
Yeah. No, exactly. No. But I mean, the thing about trail running, as you know, is the beauty of it. And as you get into, do you have the ATRs yet?
No, I'm going to get some.
Okay. So the ATRs are the trail runners, a little bit more substantial sidewalls and a little bit more substantial tread. Still a great amount of ground feel, because the beauty of trail running is that you want every step you take to be a different position, right? You want to feel it and you want to kind of go with it. Let the brain accommodate, let the feet accommodate the texture and the tilt of that ground. Again, without, it does force you to be very aware of every step you take. Right, which is not a bad thing.
Trail running is like that anyway. Trail running, you have to be hyper aware of your footfall. You can't be looking ahead of you. You have to be looking down at your feet. But I couldn't help but wonder if I had been wearing Peluvas and hit that rock.
Yeah.
What would I have been fine?
Yeah, I who knows? But I would say yes, because you would have stumbled in a different way. You would have immediately, the brain, like by the time you weighted the front foot and it recognized that the rock was uneven, or that that it wasn't flat like you assumed it was going to be, and it was a roll, the ankle would have rolled just enough, but then you would have bent the knee a little bit more and then stumbled off. Which ankle was it? To the right or left?
It was my left.
Yeah, so you would have rolled off. You would have stumbled off to the left to accommodate that. But we see that a lot with trail runners who are training in Peluvas. They mostly don't run. They mostly either walk, like hike fast, and then run the downhills or the flats.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, that's amazing. I was actually chatting with an acquaintance today at the gym, and she showed up in the gym with this giant knee brace, one of those immense knee braces. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what happened there?" And she had come down weird in a volleyball game and ruptured her ACL. And it was just like 2 or 3 days ago. And she's at the gym and she was doing some lunging and she was doing some like body weight squatting. And it was interesting because what she said was like, I'm not getting, because of the Canadian medical system is not exactly quick. It's free, but it's not fast. She's looking at like maybe an 8-month wait for her.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So she'll be better by then.
Basically, but what she said was kind of what you said, was that I don't want to say, oh, ruptured ACL, better sit on the couch until my surgery. She's like, I want to not only just move it so that I go in like biomechanically healthier, but she said she felt like there's something almost mental or psychological about it. Like, I'm still moving. I'm still up. Yeah. I'm still good. Yeah. So
well, so what we say is you do what you can do, right? With up to the point of, mild discomfort, you do what you are able to do.
Right. Yeah. Well, Mark, it seems like running is pretty dumb. I've been following you around on podcasts talking about your new book, Born to Walk. And man, you really make the case that running is pretty ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's not bad for you necessarily. It is pretty ridiculous as a pursuit for anyone other than a competitive runner.
Yeah.
So the thesis is this: humans are born to walk. We are absolutely born to be mobile. Outside Magazine just today posted a thing about longevity, and the number one marker for longevity is constant movement throughout the day. It's not running, it's not lifting, it's not biohacking.
It's almost like you've been saying that for 20 years.
It's by the way, I don't know if you saw I did respond. I said I've been saying this for 20 years, but it is so humans are born to walk. We're bipedal. It's bizarre that there are not many bipedal animals. Like, name me 5 other bipedal animals that don't have feathers or a long tail that they're standing on. And so that requires that we're always constantly moving, and our digestive systems require that. They want us to be moving along. Our lymphatic system for sure works on the basis of constant body movement. Our balance and our overall just proprioception demands that we move a lot. Again, we move through time and space and planes and ranges of motion. And walking is the quintessential human movement. So a book came out 15 years ago called Born to Run, and it posited that humans are born runners, that we have the genetics, whether it's the ability to cool ourselves much better than most other animals, so we can track an animal and chase an animal on the savannas of Africa. And when they're going to overheat and just have to stop, we can run up and jab a spear in them. Or we have this nuchal ligament in the back of our neck that keeps our head from bobbing like other animals don't have when they're running. We have, we're thin, we have narrow hips, all of these things that anthropologists have somehow interpreted as meaning that we are born to run. And my take and Brad's take on this is that we're born to walk. We're born to be able to run, and that's great. We're born to be able to walk and sprint. And believe me, our ancestors sprinted quite often to get away from something that was going to kill them, or to sprint towards something that they needed to eat. But our ancestors did not, in any stretch, walk, or they didn't run every day. No. They didn't run metronomically 7, 8, 9-minute miles every day as some fun thing to do, or even as training for life. It was antithetical to health for any of our ancestors to spend any amount of energy doing this ridiculous thing like running 7, 8, 9-minute miles. Now, so we're born to walk, we're born to be able to run. And so the concept of the persistence hunt, that's the big anthropological evidence they show, is that our ancestors grew large brains, partly because of their access to meat, which was partly a result of being able to track large beasts and eat quality protein and quality fat. But our ancestors, if you've ever seen even a modern day, sort of a ancestral hunt, it's not running, it's walking and tracking and sniffing and crouching and stopping and sprinting and running and hiding and all these things for 2 hours. It's like a Spartan race to catch up to a beast and then to spear it or put an arrow through it or whatever it is you're going to do once in a while. So our ancestors were, by virtue of their lives, their lifestyle, they walked a lot, did heavy things, and they sprinted once in a while. 3 primal blueprint laws. We're able to then go do a persistence hunt every 3, 4, 5 days, every week, whatever. But after they'd done a hunt, They weren't like, oh, my belly's full. I think I'll go on, run 7 miles and run off this, this big meal. No, it was ridiculous. So we're not born to run. Now cut to today's modern society where we have the running boom evolved from, I think, a perfect storm of events. Number one, there was an interest in cardiac fitness. There was in reducing heart attacks, which was a new big thing that only came on the scene in the 50s and 60s after Eisenhower had his heart attack, and it brought to light this idea that people needed to take care of their cardiovascular system. So Ken Cooper wrote a book in 1968 called Aerobics, and it suggested that the more high activity stuff that you did that raised your heart rate, the stronger your heart would be, and you'd live longer. He actually recanted that about 10 or 12 years later, saying, wait, there's a point at which it's too much. And then the big thing was in the early 70s when Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman invented the thick cushioned running shoe. But they invented these thick cushioned running shoes so that great runners could run longer distance and compete on a world circuit. Right. Now, understand that in the 1970s, first of all, there weren't many overweight people, and no overweight people were running. They like, to think that a fat person would go out and start running to lose weight it just made no sense at all, and no one did it. The only people who ran in the 1960s and 70s were runners. They were skinny people like myself who had self-selected because of genetics, ectomorphs with good lung capacity, with a high tolerance for pain and discomfort, and who couldn't play other sports because of their ectomorphic bodies. So we all gravitated we were all good runners, right? We all ran well. We all ran with good form. And then Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight create these shoes that are thick and cushioned, and it allows these great runners to put in more miles. I was one of them. I went from running 40 or 50 miles a week maximum, because all we had was thin minimalist shoes, to being able to run 100, 120 miles a week. Now, I got injured as a result of all those miles and a result of those thick cushioned shoes, which is one of the reasons I created Peluva. But what happened in the real tipping point was when Jim Fixx wrote a book called The Book of Running, The Complete Book of Running, and Frank Shorter wins a gold medal in the marathon in the Olympics in 1972, and now the running boom starts to take shape. And now between Ken Cooper's book on aerobics and these new shoes, everybody starts to take up jogging and running, and it becomes this thing. And then marathons become the sort of holy grail, like the bucket list item, like the New Year's resolution. And a lot of people said, well, I want to lose 30 pounds or 40 pounds or 50 pounds. I'm going to start training for a marathon, and that'll be my goal. And lo and behold, we have now decades of people who have taken up running in the name of better health, weight loss, improved cardiovascular fitness, and have been horribly disappointed by the results. Yes, there are some people who've done well. Some, again, runners who are self-selected to run should be running. But anybody, look, 75% of the country in the U.S. is overweight or obese, should not be running. No. Now, how do I define should not be running? Well, one of the biggest issues with running day in and day out is most people run at a heart rate that's too high for them. It's too stressful and too disruptive. Now, they think because they're sweating and they're grunting and struggling and suffering that it's valuable and that they're melting off the pounds. But in fact, most people are running at a heart rate that's too high to be burning fat. So they're mostly burning glycogen. Yep. Now, the effect of that is they get home and they're wickedly hungry. And the brain says we have to go eat more calories because we've burned through all of our glycogen. So they carb load every day. So it's too high a heart rate to be burning fat, and it's too low a heart rate to be improving their times. And so over the years, you see even people who would call themselves marathoners who run a 3:30 or a 3:50 marathon, and they run 4 of them or 5 of them a year, and their times never get better because they're training in this, they're in this zone where they're not getting any better, and they haven't learned how to burn fat because they're training at too high a heart rate to burn fat. They're what we call the no man's land. And, we talked about this in the original book, Primal Endurance. Brad and I talked about it 10 years ago in Primal Endurance. And it's a big part of the Primal Fitness program at the Primal Health Coach Institute is how do you figure out a way to optimize your workout routine where you're burning fat, you're building muscle, you're sparing muscle tissue, and you're improving mitochondrial biogenesis. You have more energy. You're not beat up and burned out and sick all the time or injured because of your training. And yet the running community is full of burned out, sick, tired, injured people who can't wait to get over their injury to go back and do it again the same way. And the saying about, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And yet people who run day in and day out for years and years trying to lose that extra 10 pounds or 20 pounds or trying to improve their time or it's antithetical to health for most people to run. By the way, it's even antithetical to health for runners to run. I'm just saying, if you're a good runner and you want to compete, go for it. There's a cost attached. I paid the price. A lot of runners that I know pay the price. A lot of triathletes pay the price. Mm-hmm. That's fine. It's a choice you're making willingly and knowingly that in order to win that gold medal or beat your age group, win your age group for whatever local event it is, there's a price to pay. But it is not a great choice for improving health, weight loss, improving cardiorespiratory fitness. There are so many other better ways to go about this that are kinder and gentler. I mean, at the end of the day, here's one of the things that I say: running is catabolic.
Yes.
Full stop.
Yep.
Walking is anabolic, and at the very least, it's anti-catabolic. But running is catabolic. You have to understand that running is catabolic. The reason that top runners are so freaking skinny is because it's catabolic. And all those runners go to the gym and they all lift weights. They're all trying to get stronger, but they can't keep muscle on because running is catabolic. Yeah. If you look at a bodybuilder who is trying to maintain every single ounce of muscle they build, or a weightlifter, every bit of strength and power that he or she wants to maintain, they do not want to lose it, they will still walk after a workout. They won't run, they will walk after a workout because running helps improve circulation. It burns fat, and all those guys want to burn fat too. And it's not catabolic. It's not tearing down muscle tissue.
Yeah. Hi, it's Erin Power here, co-host of Health Coach Radio. Fitness has always been a part of my life. I used to train clients one-on-one, and I still teach group exercise classes to this day. Fitness is how I got started on my journey to health coaching. Working as a fitness trainer, I always wanted to go deeper than the reps and help my clients incorporate fitness and movement into every aspect of their lives. I instinctively knew that reaching fitness goals depends on pulling the focus from performance and putting it on holistic, sustainable change. And that's exactly what the Primal Fitness Coach certification shows coaches how to do. Your clients deserve to move better, feel better, be pain-free, enjoy exercise, and love their bodies. The Primal Fitness Coach certification teaches you how to train people to be fit for life, to avoid injuries, increase mobility, develop lean muscle mass, protect joints, and optimize metabolic health. This well-rounded functional fitness certification covers best practices for daily movement, strength training and conditioning, HIIT exercises, sprinting, and more. It also includes practical hands-on coaching training and business development lessons to help you launch and grow a profitable fitness coaching business. Visit primalhealthcoach.com to learn more about the Primal Fitness Coach certification. Yeah, that's the walking being anabolic. Hell yeah. That is so obvious to me. It doesn't seem obvious. And I want to get into it a little bit because walking is having a bit of a boom, at least in my peer group, the perimenopausal realm. But when we had the lockdowns, 5 years ago, remember lockdown?
Yeah.
And my gym closed. I just walked. And then when the gyms would sporadically open again, I would get back up under the bar and I didn't have any loss of strength.
Yeah.
I had no loss of strength on squats from walking. And I think there's that's what humans are built for. As we know, we're born for that. Like all of our biomechanics and even like our DNA is expecting us to walk. So it truly is like one of the most human building anabolic endeavors, truly. And I remember going on my walks and feeling like whenever I do go for a walk, it's like, this feels strong. It's interesting because I don't even put it in the category of cardio anymore. It's not even like a fat burning thing. It is, I'm building up my body here. Right.
And cardio and fat burning are two different things anyways, right? So fat burning is what it is. You're burning fat. You and I are burning fat sitting here talking. Isn't that? We're chewing the fat and we're burning the fat.
That's right.
Right. And I almost guarantee you that if you like so many people had started running during COVID and then went to the gym, you would have lost
Big time.
strength and power and speed.
Yeah. So you mentioned this a second ago, and I'd heard you say this on somebody else's podcast. That might have been Shalene Johnson. I don't know. One of the ones you had done talking about your book. And I don't know why this had never occurred to me, but I'm a recovering cardio bunny, from the 90s and 2000s.
Yep.
And I would do these high intensity black hole fitness classes, 2 hours a day at a minimum in that zone 3, zone 4 sort of zone.
No man's land, black hole.
Man's land. Yep.
Yep.
And I always, when I reflect back on it, I say I was always tired, I was always injured, and I was always hungry. And what you said was, we've burned through our glycogen, and now the body is in a hurry to replenish it. And that makes absolute sense to me, like metabolically. Like whatever about carbs, carb burning, fat burning, the body needs to have its stores of glycogen at all times. So if they're gone, the body's like, we got to get that back immediately just in case we have to go run away from a bear, right? The glycogen has to be there. You just spent it in an Orange Theory class. You got to put it back in. And what I think is really interesting about that is like, it's a more intelligent approach to like the metabolic aspect of exercise than the calorie burning, because we're burning, 700 calories on that run, but the body doesn't even run on calories. It runs on these fuel substrates, and it has to keep the balance of fuel substrates. So the hunger that you feel after the workout isn't like, oh, I burned so many calories. I just earned these nachos or whatever. It's mac and cheese.
Yeah.
It's your body really, dramatically encouraging you to replenish glycogen, which has to be just present in the muscles. I think that's really
well. And so a couple of comments to that effect. One is when you become metabolically efficient and metabolically flexible, like we talk about all the time in the Primal Blueprint and in the Institute. When you've learned how to become metabolically flexible, the body does very well on stored body fat.
Yes.
And so it sort of it obviates the need to tap into glycogen all day long and to draw down the liver stores and all the things that tend to happen. And then the brain gets very good at running on ketones and almost prefers ketones over glucose. Well, if you're not metabolically adapted, if you're not metabolically flexible, if you haven't done the work, trained your body both through diet and through exercise, but primarily through diet to become metabolically flexible, then when you go out and do this hard workout and your watch says I burned 700 calories and you go, well, but what it is it's all glycogen that's been depleted from your muscles. And then the brain, which you have not trained to run on ketones yet, the brain is now low in glucose. Glucose, glycogen are the same thing. The brain says, "Oh my God, we're low in blood sugar. We have to compensate." And so there is this automatic compensation that happens where you don't even know what's going on. It's conscious, it's subconscious, it's unconscious. You eat more calories than you just burned, with the body trying to replenish the glycogen. In addition, typically after a workout that is too stressful, too strenuous for most people, you get back from that workout, and again, the body has this survival mechanism that says, okay, we're going to do less work throughout the day. We are not going to go rake the leaves. We're not going to go play catch with the son. We're not going to go teach the daughter how to ride the bicycle. We're not going to walk around and walk to the store, and we're just going to sit on the sofa and rest and recover.
Yeah.
I was an athlete, and that's how my body reacted. After I'd do a 100-mile ride, I probably would have been better off, walking around a little bit, but my body was saying, and I didn't know any better, take a nap, just compensate for all of the stuff that you just did, all the work you just did, especially tapping into glycogen stores, and then compensate by overeating and under moving, if you will. Meanwhile, if you are walking stimulates lipase activity, which stimulates the presence of fat as an energy substrate to be burned. So a lot of people are on a diet who would otherwise go out and run 3 miles and then come back be hungry. I would say if you're on a diet and you're eating a new way of eating and you're not used to it yet, and you feel hunger pangs, go walk for 20 minutes. And when you walk for 20 minutes, not only will you not be near the refrigerator, but you'll also you'll be stimulating a new source of energy in this very mild, low-level aerobic activity that's causing your body to tap into fat stores and create energy from that for the ATP that you just mentioned. And then you'll come back from the walk energized, refreshed, not hungry, and ready to go on and do whatever you have to do until the next mealtime comes around and it's time for you to eat. So walking is a great strategy for getting rid of hunger and appetite and cravings. Running is the opposite strategy of that. You go run, now you're even hungry after you've done that.
That's interesting because that's the whole idea of, well, if you feel hungry, just go take a walk. I've heard that platitude over the years, but like from an evolutionary, I guess, biology standpoint, it kind of goes back to the persistence hunter. This is how I like to think of it. So if we're in our DNA, we're persistence hunters, we have to outwalk the animal ostensibly. Well, as soon as you start walking, your body doesn't know that you're only going for 20 minutes. It thinks you're trying to outwalk a wildebeest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like, I feel like it triggers that sort of ancient genetic messaging. Oh, we're going to persist. We're going for a persistence hunt. We're going to be gone for 7 hours. And it just starts liberating that slow fuel from storage. So you're essentially feeding yourself off of yourself. And really, it really does resolve hunger because you just start sort of snacking off of your own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now in the book, in Border Walk, what we don't want to do is we want to give runners permission to walk. That's number one.
Right.
But we also don't want to take away the joy of running for people who claim to love running. I would question that in many cases.
I also would question that.
It's like, okay, you tell me you love running, but I would suggest that you love having run.
Right.
You love telling people you're a runner,
Yes.
but the act of running is probably not what you love. And in fact, if you're wearing headphones and listening to thrasher music to get you through the workout, you probably don't love running. You just love beating yourself up and then feeling better about having done it at the end. I mean, we have a section of the book dedicated to what we call the obligate runner, the person who feels their life is not complete unless they run every day.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not that adapted to running, if they're not that fast or not that good at it, just the fact that they feel their day is not complete without running. All of this can be addressed, again, in a much kinder, gentler way with walking and lifting weights in the gym. And yes, a little bit of sprinting. I would love for people to sprint. You know me, I'm a huge fan of sprinting, right? But it's this idea that somehow you have to run 3, 4, 5, 7 times a week to call yourself a runner. I would say, what if I got a program together where you walked at a heart rate that was optimizing your fat burning? We call it, it's a MAF rate. We call it fat max rate in the book, but it's the heart rate at which and below which you are only burning fat, or most, 98% of your energy is coming from fat, but above which you stop burning fat and you start burning more and more glycogen. So you don't want to be in that realm every day. You want to be in it once in a while. I'm okay with you being in it once in a while, right? So the difference between somebody who says, well, I run 5 days a week, so I call myself a runner, and I run 4 miles a time, so that's 20 miles a week. And my answer is, well, what if you only ran once a week, but you ran faster as a result of the other work you did? Would you not call yourself a runner anymore? Because now you're running even better than you were before, and you're not beat up, and you're running with great form, so you're not getting injured. And I'll let you run, but I want you to run in a way that serves you in the longer purpose of being cardiovascularly fit, stronger, not getting sick, not getting injured, and living longer. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's that sort of punitive element that we apply to these kinds of endeavors.
It hurts, so it must be good for me, right?
Yeah. But I like that you factored that into the book. I was going to actually ask you this question because, I get this question a lot from my clients who are women my age who also are recovering cardio bunnies. And it's like they'll say, but I like my body pump class. I like my Orange Theory class, these black hole moments. And I feel like I wanted to get your take on this, actually. So yeah, sprinting, we call that zone 5, that's the pure glycolytic expression. And then there's the, zone 2, which is the aerobic, but then there's 3 and 4, which is the black hole. But sometimes I think you've said that your fat bike rides.
Love it.
So, yeah.
I don't, yeah, exactly. I don't say stay away from those. I just say train to be able to excel in those zones once in a while.
Yeah.
So just like, our ancestors had long periods of boredom interrupted by moments of sheer terror where their heart rate went, skyrocketed. Training should be that in many cases. Long periods of low level and low cardio output, moving around a lot, walking, easy cycling, whatever you want to do, 85% of your work during the week. Twice a week in the gym, intense, high intensity weightlifting, weight training, whatever you want to call it. Sprint once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I used to race every weekend. I was going through some old clippings, newspaper clippings and old magazines, NorCal Running Review and all these, when running was huge in the 70s. And I was in every freaking race every weekend. I mean, it was amazing. There were so many races. I don't have that anymore. I don't race anymore. So once a week, my race is I get on my fat bike and I try to do an hour between zones 3, 4, and 5. I try to spend most of the time in zone 4. So say 70% in zone 4, 30% in zone 3, and 10% in zone 5. That's my race. Okay, so the rest of the week, I trained for it. Right. I didn't beat myself up. What runners do, and a lot of endurance athletes, they practice hurting every day. There's no method to getting better at what you're doing. They practice hurting every day. My method is train my aerobic system on 1 or 2 days a week, pure aerobics, train my strength, power, and speed 2 days a week, and then 1 day a week, put them all together and do an hour and 20-minute hard ride, of which 1 hour is kind of within that, warm up and cool down on either side, is a dedicated race for me. Now, I'm not racing anybody. Well, I sort of am if I ride with friends, but
yeah.
but that's once a week, and that's how. And then I ratchet up my fitness doing it once in a while. I would say the same thing to any citizen runner who wants to run in the turkey trot or the 5K or whatever the local race is. Train your aerobic system, train your power and speed. Don't get injured. Learn good form, and then once a week practice running, but not every day. Don't just go beat yourself up in no man's land in the black hole of training every single day, because you won't get faster. You will get injured. You won't lose weight. I mean, all these things that you say you don't want to do, you're actually creating by choosing this type of training.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I think for the women that I talk to, and, even your fat bike experience and, my trail running, whatever it is, it's the exhilaration, it's the soul food of it. So as an occasional thing, it's not problematic. It's problematic when you're anchoring to that as your one and only method to get fit and lose weight and maintain your health. It's totally, to your earlier point, counterintuitive or contrary to that.
Yeah. The other thing that we came up with recently, and if you've read any of Robert Lustig's work, the hacking of the American mind and the concept of dopamine and serotonin, right? Yeah. Running is dopamine, walking is serotonin.
Yeah. Full
stop.
Yep.
Mic drop. You get what I'm saying, though?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fully.
So running is that quick hit. It's that endorphin rush. And people say, well, I love the runner's high. Well, the runner's high is a survival mechanism, which is basically telling you that you just survived a life or death experience. And what, you're going to go do it again tomorrow? Right. And the next day and the next day, just because you have access to unlimited amounts of carbohydrates to go refill the glycogen stores and beat yourself up every single day. It's a dangerous cycle that we put ourselves on. And again, in the name of chasing this ephemeral runner's high that is, it's certainly better than an addiction to drugs. Well, not really. It's different. It's not better. It's different.
See, now I'm thinking about endorphins. I just want to pick your brain on this. This just totally came out of thin air. But like the runner's high is typically attributed to like endorphins or adrenaline. Yeah. I don't know. Are those the same? I have no idea.
No.
Okay.
And endorphins are enkephalins. They're a morphine-like substance produced by the brain in response to a huge effort, the likes of which the body has not encountered on a regular basis for some time. Endorphins are so an example of the endorphin effect would be, we go on this persistence hunt. We're out there 2.5, 3 hours chasing the wildebeest. We're 7 miles away from camp and we failed. We didn't get the beast.
Right.
Are we just going to curl up in a ball and cry and die?
Whoa.
No. Endorphins allow us to at least maintain this positive attitude to get us back to camp and get us back to homeostasis. Okay. Endorphins are secreted when a zebra is being eaten alive by a lion for 20 minutes to allow for a peaceful death rather than a dramatic screaming fest. So they have an evolutionary basis, but it's not necessarily
A good thing.
a good thing in the context of today's civilization. Now, again, dopamine versus serotonin. Serotonin is a sort of a long-term feel-good hormone that we produce as a result of an effort that satisfies and allows us to be content. Dopamine is like this a rush that we get from sugar and from sex and from devices and things like that. So we live in a society now where we're chasing a dopamine hit every 40 seconds, whereas we would be better off chasing the serotonin, the long-term effects of the serotonin, which result from more of a positive type outcome and a positive type stress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just wild because, I mean, as you described endorphins and how this sort of feel-good body chemical kicks in when you are in peril, essentially. And you need to just muster up some last will to live or whatever. It's not great. It actually doesn't have a positive origin. It's wild that we have attributed the runner's high, the endorphins of whatever, when it's like, this is sort of like on the fringes of aliveness. Like when you experience.
Yeah, no. And it's, I was one of the people that tapped into the runner's high to my detriment. I mean, my career ended as a result of an endorphin high that lasted 5 days. And I was at the peak of my career and felt that I could go out and run 5 consecutive 20-mile runs in 5 days. Now, people do this, all the time now. You'll hear people running a marathon a day, but they're not running 6-minute miles like I was doing. So I was running, I did 25 consecutive 20-mile runs, each one faster than the previous one, because each one I felt invulnerable, I felt impervious, I felt superhuman until I trashed my hip flexors on the last one.
Yeah. Interesting. Fascinating. Well, so what's interesting is that, again, massive respect to you, obviously. I feel like you're always ahead of the zeitgeist. Somehow you transcend the zeitgeist. I don't know how you do that. Presumably you and Brad working on this book for a couple of years. I don't know how long it takes to write a book, but a couple of years.
2, pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And I don't know, but like in the last year, walking has now like reached this fever pitch, the benefits of walking, and it's, people are talking about it like it's brand new. Like it's like, did you know walking was good for you? And it's like, yeah, Mark's been saying that for 20 years.
Yeah.
So the popularity of walking seems like it's really ramped up. I feel, obviously this is great. What do you think? I mean, I'm hearing this a lot from my perimenopausal, like I said earlier, the women going through this ridiculous change of life, and how we need to do this for the meditative benefits and the cortisol lowering benefits and all this other stuff. I mean, how do you feel your book is going to contribute to this new sort of narrative?
Interesting, because you take a point of view when you write a book, and my original point of view was to really we spend 80 pages trashing the running boom as having been pretty much inappropriate for all but a few percentage of the population.
Just to interject, I love that you and Brad spent 80 pages trashing the running boom, because you're very qualified for the job, the both of you.
Yeah. Brad was the number 3 ranked triathlete in the world when I coached him in 87, 88. And he was suffering adrenal burnout at the time from overtraining. And, and I was, a top ranked marathoner in the late 70s and finished 4th in the Ironman in 82. So we have the pedigree, but we have that also the experience gives us a point of view that not many people would ever be able to achieve. And I think the people that are not going to necessarily agree with what we say are the lifetime runners who are like, Mark, you were a runner. What the hell? You're recanting everything you ever did. I'm like, kind of. But I'm one of the people who was probably genetically gifted to run and was able to run and extracted the most I possibly could out of my body. So one of the things I learned from the past 30 years was, because people would say, well, if you had to do over again, would you do things differently? Yeah, a little bit, but I'd still probably hammer myself, because that's how I was able to get the fast times. Now, I would do so in retrospect, knowing that it was not good for me, knowing that I'm paying a price later on for something I'm doing right now that's going to give me some measure of, I don't know, self-confidence, street cred, bravado, gonna, overcome the insecurities of growing up bullied and whatever. People do these things for a lot of reasons, most of which are probably deep-seated childhood, traumas of one kind or another, unless they know better. And I feel like we were well positioned. Also, I grew up during this running boom, so I started running before the running boom, and watched it happen and participated in it, and was an early adopter of the thick cushion running shoes. So it's not like I'm going back to the history books going, I wonder what happened in 1972. And I was there. I was, on the starting line of some of these races. And I was a Nike athlete. I was being sent these ridiculously colored shoes, lime green with brown trim and weird stuff, because I was on their list of test athletes. And I don't regret any of that, but I watched it all happen. Brad and I kept a registry that goes back now 15 years of all the people we know or knew who had a heart attack and lived, had a heart attack and died, had open heart surgery. These are world-class athletes. These are people who won world championships, won major races, set world records. And we stopped keeping track at about 60 individuals who had died or had heart pacemakers installed or open heart surgeries. And here we are thinking that the more you do, the better, the longer you're going to live and the better it is for your heart. No, full stop, no. The greatest triathlete, or one of the greatest triathletes that ever lived, Dave Scott, just had massive open heart surgery a couple of months ago, and it totally attributes it to his lifestyle of training, right? So there's a point at which the body can't handle this and accommodates it by either building up plaque in the arteries or scarring of in my own case, I have PVCs, premature ventricular contractions, as a result of all the scarring in my heart as a result of, for 30 years, maxing my heart rate out 4 times a week, not once in a while, but 4 times a week, and not for 30 seconds in intervals, but for, 2 hours. So, do as I say, not as I did.
I mean, I can't imagine, apart from the tiny subset of the population which you mentioned, which is successful current professional runners, there would be any detractors. Who could argue with everything you just said? Who could argue? By the way, it doesn't seem to me like you. I always think it's interesting how you don't. What am I trying to say here? You don't care to argue. Like, bring it on. Like, say what you want to say, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Here to tell you what I know and take it or leave it. Like,
well, that's been I would say that aspect of my personality. I go back to having been a contrarian back the primal blueprint, right? Like, fat isn't bad. Fat's not the enemy. Cholesterol is not the enemy. Exercise is not a great way to lose weight. Statins are the worst thing that ever happened. I go on and on about in sort of punching at the mainstream conventional wisdom. And then this just is another aspect of that, with regard to the notion that people have thought for the longest time that running is the single purest thing that a human being can do, and the more you do, the better. And I'm here to say, absolutely not.
Right. By the way, did you hear, speaking of fat not being bad for you, did you hear the FDA declared eggs healthy again this week?
We're winning slowly but surely.
Okay. I have 5 more rapid fire questions for you, and then I'm going to let you.
All right.
Okay. These are in the realm of coaching, since we are in Health Coach Radio.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So now getting into walking, we're trying to encourage our clients to walk. So for people who have never contemplated walking as a serious fitness practice, how would you encourage coaches to encourage their clients to start incorporating into their lives in a meaningful way?
First thing I'd say is that the amount of time you spend walking, there's no extra credit for putting it all together at one time. In other words, you're going to walk 60 minutes in a day. There's no extra credit for doing all 60 minutes. Right. You can do 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes. And so the best way to do this is in small chunks if you're starting. Yeah. Maybe it's walking the dog. Maybe it's going down to get the mail. Maybe it's having a phone call and pacing while you're on a phone. But get into the habit of walking. Certainly walking with good form. So that's something I would advise coaches, like day one, start thinking about good form, which includes good footwear. And, that's a different subject, but all of these things, it's, again, we've talked about micro workouts, right? We've been talking about that for 10 years. Well, micro workouts works for walking as well.
Yeah. Cool.
That wasn't rapid fire, sorry.
That's okay. My second question is actually kind of similar. It's for somebody skeptical about walking. So now we're getting into the realm of coaching the
Yep.
client. The client
Yep.
says, I don't think I'm going to hit my fitness goals or my weight loss goals walking. What's an experiment, or what do you think is something that a coach can say or do or encourage or nurture their client to?
Yeah. So walking is not about burning calories. Running is not about burning calories. Aerobic activity is not about burning calories. It's about movement. So if you are attached to the burning of calories, you're missing the point. Calories, this whole thing about calories and weight loss, that happens as a result of the shifts in your diet, whether you're keto or carnivore or intermittent fasting or whatever choice of way of eating you have. If you're mindful about it, your weight loss, your fat loss will come as a result of mostly about how you choose to eat and when you eat and the amount you eat. When you're moving, do not think in terms of calories burned. So don't even pay attention to the watch. This is about movement. So the more ways, look, if you look at most Asian civilizations that have Tai Chi and Qigong and all these different, they're just slow moving. They're not thinking, oh my God, I'm burning half a calorie doing this. No, they're putting their bodies through different ranges and planes of motion, because at the end of the day, movement by itself is one of two major identifiers for longevity and quality of life. Movement, the ability to move around the world, and cognition, the ability to have thoughts and memories and do that. Those two things, movement and cognition, define quality of life at the back end of your life. So whatever you can do now to enhance movement, and walking is still the greatest thing you can do, don't pay attention to calories.
You've inspired thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands, of health, fitness, nutrition professionals. What do you think is the most important trait for a coach who wants to make a lasting impact on their clients?
Empathy.
Yeah.
I think the ability to understand where the client is coming from, the motivation, whatever historical context, the goals. I think the empathy part of that also involves the forgiveness for getting off the program or going off the rails. But just being able to identify, put yourself in their shoes and understand that individual has a unique set of things that run their life. And if you can understand and empathize with that, you'll be a much more effective coach at helping the client and you arrive at a plan of action.
Perfect answer. You've often said, and your catchphrase has been, I don't know if it still is, but live awesome.
Yeah.
What does that phrase mean to you now, and how has your understanding of it evolved?
It's evolved over the last 10 or 15 years as I've sensed my own mortality, which in my case means, a diminution, a slowing down of my ability, my running speed on the Frisbee pitch, my ability to keep up with my grandchildren, running a 50-yard dash on the football field. I mean, all of these things they're metrics that I used to kind of live my life by. And then there was also the business aspect of what I did. Like, am I going to be successful as a business person? And am I going to have the security that I want for myself and that I lie awake at night worrying about for myself? Right. Live awesome means whatever happens, there is no tomorrow, there is no yesterday, there's just right now. And so it really means extracting the greatest amount of enjoyment, fulfillment, contentment, pleasure, hedonism, if you will, out of every possible moment. And there are a lot of these moments throughout the day. And if you look carefully, you'll identify them. If you don't look carefully, they'll fly by you. My daughter is here in Aspen. She just left this morning with my two grandchildren who are 5 and 3. And to have them come up and say, "We love you, Poppy," over and over and over again, those are the kind of moments like you can't plan for those. You can't buy them. You can't train for them. Yeah. But that's the thing that gives me contentment, joy, pleasure, whatever. So live awesome in the context of where I am right now at 71 years old with a new hip. Living awesome is those sorts of things. Finding the opportunity to wake up in the morning and feel energetic and feel good and be optimistic and be excited about whatever it is I'm going to do that day. Like, living awesome also means getting out of bed in the morning with something to do, right? And being excited about actually getting out of bed, not just lying there and, oh, geez, I guess I better get up. So it has a lot of meaning. It's a short phrase, live awesome, but it has a lot of sort of subtext meaning to it.
Amazing. Very human. Well, as you reflect on the arc of your life and work, what are you most proud of, and take us through what you hope is still ahead for you?
I'm most proud of my kids because that's, to me, that was something that was never going to happen in my life until I met my wife. And then now that my children are having children, and it's a big thing to have kids that are successful and thoughtful and kind and smart and make contributions. So there's that. I mean, I go back. I've had so many careers. I was the Secretary General of the International Triathlon Union for a bunch of years. I helped create the anti-doping program there. I'm very proud of that. This is long before I ever came to Primal Blueprint and wrote the Primal Blueprint, of which I'm very proud, or started Primal Kitchen, of which I'm very proud, or put together with you and with Brad, the Primal Health Coach Institute, and Laura, of course. And we've had thousands and thousands of people go through that, and the feedback I get from the Institute. So I have a lot of these proud moments. And I think, one of the problems in life is to assign value to them. Like, what's the most proud?
Right.
Because I'm proud of all of them,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Even asking that question, I was thinking about during the Olympics when somebody would win a gold medal and the reporter would be like, "What's next for you?" And they'd be like, "Do you mind? I just won a gold medal." Like,
yeah, that's 100% exactly.
Yeah.
And so what's next, is Peluva is a big deal for me. This, I think we're going to do with footwear what we did with food and really shake up the status quo and get people thinking about foot health. I mean, I'm speaking at a couple of events coming up in the next few months. And I mean, my theme is, look, there's this whole arena of people out there calling themselves biohackers, and they're doing the red light therapy and the cold therapy and the compression therapy, and they're taking the NMN and the NAD, and they're doing all of the infusions. I'm like, dude, if you haven't addressed foot health, you're a hypocrite and you're an idiot, because it's the lowest hanging fruit possible. And yet, I've had many biohackers go, "Oh yeah, but the 5 toes, Mark, I can't get around that." I'm like, really? Seriously? And you're walking around with an orange mask on your face all day. So anyway, so so what's next for me is this, message to the world that foot health is the new sleep. It really is. Like, foot health is so critical. It's our contact with the universe. And we have seemed somehow to overlook it in the name of fashion and false comfort.
Yeah. I got to say that I know I'm a huge fan, but the Peluvas look good. They look good. They're not a weird looking 5-toe shoe. So, I mean, anybody who's on the fence, you got to check out the Peluvas. Is it wearpeluva.com? Wear
Peluva is the Instagram handle, and it's just peluva.com. Yeah. All of our new styles, we have some amazing new styles on the site at peluva.com. Yeah.
Peluva.com. It's amazing. And one of the events you're going to is the Health Optimization Summit. I saw.
Yes.
I've got a ticket for that one. So I'm excited to listen to you take the biohackers down. That'll be fun.
Cool.
Amazing. Okay. Well, Mark, thank you so much for this end of year chat. It's our annual tradition, and I appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Erin. Great to talk to you. Yes.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.